I am Anne van den Bulke, working in the European Commission in DG Employment in the unit Vocational Education and Training and CEDEFOP. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the 12th live discussion focusing on assistive technologies and accessible digital learning environment for persons with disabilities, experience and good practices from regions in Europe. Before we start, I would like to inform you that this event is accessible with subtitles on YouTube. To switch on the subtitles, you have to click on the settings icon and on subtitles/CC. In today's live discussion, we will explore the topic of accessible learning environments and the role of assistive technologies. We will first have a look at inspiring practices from across Europe and then discuss the barriers that disabled learners are facing in education and vocational education and training. We will also look at the potential solutions that assistive technology can offer and how it can be best used. One of the questions that we will raise is how we can ensure that assistive technology is implemented in a safe, ethical, and affordable way while ensuring that human care remains irreplaceable. Towards the end of our event, panelists will be asked to offer some recommendations for policymakers and practitioners that can help create inclusive learning environments for current and future generations of students and learners of all ages. On our panel today, we have the great privilege to have with us regional representatives and training providers in the European Union who are all committed to support apprentices with disabilities using assistive technologies. And we also have a fourth panelist representing the robotics industry, who will be able to shed light on some of the more technical aspects of our topic. I will soon introduce you to our eminent panelists, but before doing so, I would like to hand over the floor to an expert on our topic who will set the scene. Immaculada Plasencia Porrero, my colleague, Senior Expert in Social Affairs at the Disability and Inclusion Unit in Directorate General Employment in the European Commission. Having joined the Commission in 1991, she has been working for many years on the EU implementation of the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Today, she is leading the team working on the Strategy for Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2021-2030. Immaculada, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne. Thanks very much for inviting me to address a few words to you in this very interesting event in which you're going to explore the use of assistive technology in digital learning environments. And in fact, I mean, we need to see that the use of assistive technology goes beyond the learning environment, because often assistive technologies accompany individuals with disabilities across their life. I would like to start by providing a little overview of what exactly are we talking about when we talk with assistive technology, and how does it fit with the policy developments that we have in Europe, and also to explain a little bit about those policy developments in relation to assistive technology. To start with, let me say that assistive technology can never be seen in isolation. Assistive technology, whether it's in a learning environment, whether it's in a work environment, whether it is in a leisure environment, needs to be seen as an instrument together with accessibility, interacting together in order to provide equal access for persons with disabilities. So assistive technology is an instrument that provides and contributes to achieve that enjoyment of the right to access, like anybody else, to whatever environment or activity, or perform a certain task. It is important to discuss a little bit what do we mean by assistive technology. There are several definitions of assistive technologies. We do have one of them in our own legislation that I will refer to it in a minute, and it indicates that assistive technology that assistive technology is any item, piece, equipment, service, product, so really very, very wide, including software, that is used to increase, maintain, substitute, or improve functional capabilities of persons with disabilities, or for alleviation and compensation of impairments, activity limitations, or participation restriction. If you want to simplify and use with and say what this is about, what this is about is using technology, any type of technology, in order to help us to helping individuals to do what they want to do and what they would like to achieve. And this is the use of the technology that we need to do. The complex situation of assistive technology in not only in Europe but around the world makes it a very special type of devices in market terms. The buyers are not those that use them. So persons with disabilities usually do not buy them. There are normally intermediaries. It could be insurance companies, but it could be also, in our case, on education, schools or educational places. This means that the normal market forces that allow you to choose your preferences, to be able to choose how you want to do things, is not always possible for persons with disabilities because of these procedures. Assistive technology is also not only a piece of equipment. It needs really to be looked at as a service. It is very well known that especially complex assistive technology or sophisticated assistive technology is provided to individuals with disabilities without any support, explanation, training, maintenance, and then the assistive technology with all its potential is abandoned. This is really a pity. And this links with the issue of how to select the best piece of assistive technology. We can go really back to the 80s, in which the Commission did a database of assistive technology, still using before the internet era, what's called HandyNet. This database evolved, and there are too many databases at national level, which after that started to connect itself. There is a service called EASTIN, where if you enter, you can see a lot of assistive technology in different countries. Assistive technology remains anchor at national, in sometimes even regional and local level, due to these characteristics of the market that I mentioned before. So it is not possible all the time for a consumer to say, okay, I like the wheelchair that they sell in that other country, or I want that assistive listening devices, and I can go and just freely decide which one fits better for me. Normally, this is not possible. There are reimbursement schemes, as I mentioned, but there is also eligibility lists. You can buy some technology, but not some other technology. Now, a good opportunity and potential is happening now because there is a move between assistive technology towards accessible products. And this move has some good elements. For example, if you had low vision in the past, you really needed to use and to buy a device to enlarge the screen that would cost you as much as the computer. Now we get it for free with our computers. Now, while this has very good elements, there is always a tension in this field, and that is that assistive technology at the end is about personalization, is about choices, is about individualization of the technology. So the more that you go mainstream, you get advantages, it's cheaper, is more available, but is less customized. And is less customized, and its used is also more detached from the technology itself. For example, to give you an example, there is a very interesting research assistive technology product which is a little car, a little car for children with cerebral palsy. And I'm putting this example because the link to early education. And these children are normally sitting in a chair and getting passive information, while the apprentissage of little children is really a movement plays an important role. The interaction when they go to get to the toy, back from the toy, they get to their peers, they come back to their peers, all that pedagogical environment needs to be aligned with the assistive technologies. And when a child is, for example, as I said, with cerebral palsy, gets this type of device, they are able to move around and learn skills, developed new competencies that will certainly be essential for learning at a later age. I don't want to extend too much because, as you can see, the subject is really very important, and is also very attractive for me, and I could be for long speaking, but I will just want to leave you, before leaving you, pass a couple of messages. In the new strategy that on the rights of persons with disabilities that was adopted last year, we have several references to what we are going to do on assistive technology. Assistive technology in the sense of looking to the market, but also the use of assistive technology for education and, for example, for employment. The other message that I would like to pass you is that we are paying attention also to assistive technology in the context of our accessibility legislation. One of the big challenges is to have that seamless interaction between accessible mainstream technologies and assistive technologies, so that when you get, for example, a new release of the operating system, your assistive technology will continue to work and you do not need to throw away and buy a new one. So if you, we have a directive that is going to be transposed in June this year and applicable in a couple of years, the European Accessibility Act, that refers to assistive technology, contains a definition of assistive technology, and requires the interoperability of assistive technology with accessible mainstream technologies. I think that this is really very good news, and that as technology evolves, we will get more and more opportunities. I mean, look at, well, today we will have an example of robotics, but also we can look to the big potential of artificial intelligence for image recognition, for compensating hearing impairments, or for supporting persons with intellectual disabilities. So we will, the opportunities that we will get with the evolution of technology need to be harnessed, but we need to make sure that our policy and legal environment allow for that, foster that use of and evolution of the technology, and at the end of the day, the reachability, availability of that technology for the end user, because that's why the assistive technology is being developed. So this is a little introduction, an appetizer to the subject, and I pass the floor back to Anne, who will be moderating this event today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Immaculada, for your interesting and inspiring words and engaging introduction. Now I have the honor to introduce and welcome our panelists. May I ask to turn on your cameras, please? I will start with Emma Teiland Nilsson, who is a development manager at the Gothenburg region in Sweden. She's managing different school development projects such as J.R. Samsar and Dig Ing. With a background as a vocational education and training teacher, Emma has experience from managing apprenticeship programs in schools and creating fruitful collaboration between training providers and companies. Welcome, Emma. From Sweden, now we go to Greece with Sophia Karaguni. She is an EU project manager from EEA Margarita, a vocational training center in Greece. Sophia has worked for almost a decade with implementation of projects supporting persons with intellectual disabilities. She has an academic background in researching how technology and co-production can support people with intellectual disabilities in developing digital self-advocacy skills. From Greece, we go to Germany with Mrs. Andrea Bernert-Bürkle. She is an EU project manager in the region of Baden-Württemberg and has a background working for Volkshochschulen. These are the biggest providers of adult education in Germany. Today, Andrea runs a regional project in the field of language training and labor market integration of immigrants, and she specializes in helping individuals with mental, physical, and sensorial disabilities. And finally, I have the pleasure to introduce Fabrice Goffin. He is the CEO of Zorabots, a robotics company in Belgium that produces software for service robots, social robots, and personal assistants for the hospitality and caring sectors. Before becoming a CEO, Fabrice did a lot of consultancy on technology in the Middle East. He gained practical experience from designing revolutionary touch devices for smart homes and smart hotels. I would now like to invite the panelists to present their own experiences with accessible learning environments and assistive technologies. Emma, representing the Gothenburg region, would you like to start?
Yes, of course, and thank you very much. I work for an organization that, among other things, conducts various types of school development projects on behalf of the 13 municipalities with which we collaborate. Through some of our different projects, we aim to create opportunities for a qualitative collaboration between school and working life. And when it comes to students with different kind of disabilities, it has been visible in schools in Sweden that they struggle with finding workplaces who can offer this target group opportunities for internship. Many times it has to do with an uncertainty about the target group's conditions and needs. We have also experienced that this target group, where there is an extra need for preparation and follow-up before, during, and after the internship. This has contributed to projects with the purpose of supporting that process. Two of these projects have greatly contributed to the experiences I bring with me in today's conversation. One of these projects is Digging, which is financed by Erasmus+. And Digging is a partnership between 3 European countries, Sweden, France, and UK. And the project is looking into more engaging and motivating learning and teaching experiences using digital experiences in internship. Above all, it is about how digital tools can support the important preparation and follow-up work when it comes to internship. The other project is J.R. Samsar, financed by the European Social Fund. And J.R. Samsar's aim is to create equal conditions for young people with intellectual disabilities to facilitate establishment in working life. by developing and establishing a regional collaboration platform, which enables collaboration between educational organizers, working life and non-profit organizations. The project will contribute to a quality-assured collaboration and for the target group, easier transition from school to working life. When I talk about accessible learning environments and assistive technologies here today, I do it mainly based on the pedagogical process around the internship. That is how digital tools can support the preparation and the follow-up process. But I also want to emphasize the importance of a platform where school and working life, as well as other important actors, meet to talk about how we jointly can create the best conditions for the target group.
If I were to choose one element from your presentation, I would say that I fully agree on the high and urgent importance of providing teachers and schools with opportunities to innovate and to make use of all the assistive technologies. Many thanks. Sophia, we are curious to hear what you would like to share with us from Greece related to the use of assistive technologies for persons with disabilities. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anne, for inviting me. So hello, everyone. My name is Sophia, and I'm the Senior Project Manager of Vocational Training Center Margarita. So Margarita is an organization that offers services to people with intellectual disabilities, mild and moderate, from ages from 14 to 50. And our services are trying to support them through their journey towards adulthood, promote their autonomy, independent living, provide vocational guidance, and of course, ensure their inclusion in society in the labor market. So we understand that assistive technologies and technologies in general have impacted us and the lives of our service users quite a lot, since technology has a major part in our everyday living. So that's why some years ago, I think it was 2018, when we have funded our educational technology workshop, where we offer service to people with intellectual disabilities regarding their digital skills. We're trying to foster their skills in order to be able to use technology for their advantage better. We try to eliminate the digital divide, and at the same time to promote a more inclusive digital environment. So in this discussion, from our side, we also try to shed some light on what assistive technologies are and how technologies can be used for the benefit of people with intellectual disabilities. So some activities we are doing in our educational technology workshop are relevant to self-advocacy through digital storytelling activities. We also try to promote social and digital inclusion through blogging and the safe use of social media. And cultivate independent skills by learning more how technology can be used to promote autonomy. So, for example, we have activities using Kinems, which is a program, a software and equipment that through gamification processes where our service users use their bodies to interact with them, learning gaming environment, they improve their literacy and numeracy skills. We have robotics, not of course like Zorabots and the Fabrice presentation later, but we use robotics to learn more about logical and mathematical thinking, which will support them in their daily life in general. And we couldn't leave outside mobile applications because everyone uses mobiles and the applications can help us a lot in our daily living. So we try to identify which applications can be used to promote communication independence, how to manage time better, how to use transport and directions more efficiently. And finally, we have activities relevant to vocational training because a lot of environments nowadays rely heavily in productivity tools and document development tools, and of course, social media. So we offer services where we train people with intellectual disabilities on how to use Microsoft Office, Google Workspace, Zoom, and in general, mainstream applications that are part of the everyday life of an employee in many different companies. At the same time, it was 2 years ago with the outbreak of COVID and lockdown, we developed the Google Classroom, where we try to put inside a lot of training material of Margarita, so people with intellectual disabilities won't be disconnected by their training activities, and to keep communication with the service provider and their friends from here, despite the lockdown. And in our portfolio, trying to achieve all these different goals, as you might understand, it's quite a wide spectrum. We have 4 projects that we are very proud of. Antelis Plus is a European project about the development of guidelines to service providers on how to make more accessible digital learning environments. We have Yacht Project, Bring Your Own Device, where we learn exactly how to use applications and mobiles in our how people with intellectual disabilities can use this mobile to navigate better in their daily and labor life. Decider Project, which is about self-advocacy and decision-making. And we have an app in there where they will try to learn about different choices and how to choose based on what they wish and need. And the Right to Connect, it's a freshly new project, and it will provide guidelines on how to become a netizen, how to be a citizen inside the network we all know and live when we are on our computers. And that summarizes a little bit our good practice. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sophia. I retain from you the promotion of autonomy for social and employment inclusion. I think this is a very important aspect from all you mentioned so many important things. And we also learned about being a netizen, an active participant in the online community. And of course, we have to make sure that everyone becomes a netizen. Many thanks, Sophia. Now let us listen to Andrea from Germany and find out more about some interesting inclusive approaches in Baden-Württemberg.
Yes, first of all, thanks a lot that I have the opportunity to speak a bit from the point of view of the field of adult education. And I won't speak about a specific project today, but about our general, let's say, strategy to create inclusive environments in the field of adult learning. And I can say that inclusiveness, and if we talk about inclusiveness in Germany, we usually mean inclusion of people with disabilities and handicaps into learning. So our strategic goals of inclusiveness in our institutions, in our adult education centers, and I can say that this is a really strategic goal for us. And in Baden-Württemberg, in adult education, we actually have 3 approaches to ensure accessibility and inclusiveness. And our main goal, first of all, is that we can integrate and include people with handicaps in our usual work, in our usual training offers, in our offers that are open to people with and without handicaps. So that's the first goal. That's what we would call real inclusiveness. And when we have people coming to our classes, this could be people with different sorts of handicaps, I would say. As you heard before, I'm mainly active in projects of language training and vocational training for immigrants, and also in basic skills education with people who have difficulties in reading and writing, etc. And there it could very well be that we have people, for example, with physical handicaps, or with sensorical handicaps, so difficulties in listening are very typical, or in sight, so watching is a problem. We also have people with mental problems, maybe slight mental problems, maybe just learning difficulties. So that's a typical thing we are dealing with. And when we integrate these people in our classes, it's always very individualized approach, first of all. So we heard that before, that we really have to have a look at the person. The person quite often brings assistive technology with it. So it already has tools or software or things it uses. So our role is really to see what problems might the person have, either in our classrooms or also at a workplace. We quite often combine this in dual schemes and see what type of technology does the person bring with it and how can we adapt it to the situation. That's one thing. We also, of course, have some technical tools in our classrooms that we use. For example, if it comes to teaching people reading and writing, of course, we have a broad set of apps that help us do so, tablets and apps where you learn how to write characters, where you can hear things, where you can use audio, things like that. And I would also like to mention our digital options we have. On the one hand, of course, we have presence classroom trainings, but we also have a learning platform of our organization called, from the national level, actually from our national head organization called Vhs Learning Platform. And this is specifically targeted to basic education, so learning how to read and write, mathematical skills, etc., but also German as a foreign language. So for the immigrants, we use this a lot as an accompanying tool to our normal trainings, to our classroom trainings. And this learning platform is, according to German law, barrier-free, or in practice, I would say at least barrier-arm. Being very intuitive, working a lot with audio, so all structural texts and all texts are available as audios so that people can listen to what is written. So a lot of tools that ensure a barrier-free access to this learning platform. So that's one strategy, including people in our normal learning environment, let's say. And a second line of activity in our adult education schools is that we have a lot of courses that we advertise specifically as inclusive classes. So trying to attract people with and without handicaps. And the idea is that they can help each other in the classrooms, also sometimes with technology, but also helping each other, for example, in IT classes, offering support. In these classes, we typically use a lot of software, for example, for subtitling, so that people with difficulties to hear, then they can read things. So technology like that. And again, here, it's always an individual thing to find out which technology helps. And last but not least, we have specific offers for people only for people with handicaps and disabilities, and we also try to make them digital. For example, during the pandemic, we had classes for people with mental handicaps on Zoom, and then it's again, a challenge to make sure that people know how to access the classroom, that they know the tools we use there. Again, we have some specific apps in these classrooms. And we found out that it is important not only to have the technology, but also to have some helpers then who support people in accessing the digital environments. So these are basically three strategies we follow, and I'll report a bit more later on.
Many thanks, Andrea. And from you, I retained the real inclusive classes where people learn from each other, groups with handicaps and groups without handicaps. I think this is very often forgotten, and it's a very important element. Learning from each other, and then also the individualized support. And now I turn to Fabrice. Representing a robotics company, you have a long experience of making technology help people. Would you have examples to share of how assistive technologies can support learners with disabilities?
Thank you. Yes, indeed. We are focusing on robotics, but we know for a fact that there is quite a lot of technology around us. Some of the examples would be reading pens or voice recognition devices, or even digital recorders. We have seen also some electronic spell checkers, word prediction software, visual search engines. All these kind of stuff are around us and are available. But we have been focused as a robotic company, of course, on robotics. And I can give you two examples of the robots that we have been using in order to help disabled people or children, and to help also children that would not be able to functionate due to an accident or due to a medical condition. And the first one that we used was introduced in 2014, Telepresence Robots. Since the pandemic, of course, we all know the telepresence, we all know the robots that are available in telepresence, but back then we were installing robots in the classroom exactly at the same place as normally the child would have been sitting. And the ability would have been given to the child at home, of course, to listen to the course, but also to interact and to be able also to ask some questions and to be present, physically be present, but then through the telepresence robot. We have quite a lot of success in that, and that gave the ability of also, of course, to the child to remain present between the friends that the child had, and also in contact with the daily teacher. On another part, the second thing that we did is we did some testing, and we introduced this little guy here. This is a humanoid robot with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, as you can see. And we introduced the robots in autism. After an introduction at elderly care, we saw that the big advantage of this robot is that the robot made no judgment. So it wouldn't judge an elderly person asking a question, but it wouldn't judge as well a child on anything that the child would do. And we saw also through research, the users determined that the robot increased the social initiatives of the children with autism. So at the first place, it was a good introduction to have these robots in the class, or let's say in the daily work with the children. And even by making it easy to use this robot with the software that we developed here in Belgium, we were able also to introduce it to the parents and to have the parents use the robot next to, let's say, the traditional therapist that would work with the child or with the children every day. When we're talking about the telepresence robot, that was for children between 8 years and 14, 15 years old. And for this little guy here, we were already starting at the age of 3, between 3 to 8 years old. Quite some success. So actually typical robotic technology being introduced to help, let's say, disabled or children with the needs.
Thanks a lot, Fabrice. Robots make no judgment. I think this is also a very important statement, which I will not forget. And of course, knowing that it increases social integration and social activities of young people with disabilities is, of course, a great aspect of it. I think we can go to the second part of our discussion, and the topic of it would be barriers for persons with disabilities and challenges related to assistive technologies. We all know access is not easy to assistive technologies, and is in particular for people with disabilities. We will explore the barriers that the people encounter and the challenges associated with the use of the technologies, and what kind of barriers do persons with disabilities face in education and in vocational education and training. Can assistive technology solutions be a way to overcome these barriers? I turn to Emma. Would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you. When it comes to different type of barriers, this of course varies within the target group and must be set in relation, of course, to the environment they encounter. The type of support needed is therefore, in our experience, very individual. And it is also important that one's assumption about the barriers that people with disabilities face is examined by listening to the target group. In our project Digging, for example, the main target group is students with neuropsychological disabilities. And we first had a foregone conclusion that the target group would be quite worried and hesitant when it comes to internship because of the different environment and different routines that they were than what they are normally used to. In the conversation we had with the target group, this assumption turned out to be relatively incorrect. Many of the students testified that the internship was something they were really looking forward to. At the same time, they also testified that they were nervous and that they did not really know what to expect. We have therefore looked at different ways to prepare and follow up the students during their internship and how digital tools can facilitate and support such way of working. Within this project digging, we don't really develop solutions, but what we do is map the needs that exist and present proposals for solutions. The development may possibly take place in future projects and initiatives. The solutions in this case is mostly not about creating new digital solutions, but to make great use of the digital competence and the digital tools that have been, for example, developed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Different solutions that we have looked at are, for example, how workplaces can be visible through VR. In that way, students have the possibility to experience the environment they will face during their internship, and which might make them more comfortable. We have also talked about how digital meeting solutions, like for example Zoom, can be used so that students and the supervisor at the workplaces can meet before the internship, but also as a way for the teacher to easily have contact with both the student and the supervisor during internship. An additional solution that we have talked about is some form of application where the teacher can easily follow the student during internship. In this way, the teacher could quickly identify if there is any need for support. To prepare for internship in an undramatic and more playful way, we have also talked about gamification as a tool. And different situations could in that way be presented, different situations that may arise at the workplace, and where students need to make different choices on how to solve that situation. And depending on their answers, different consequences will be presented. An important aspect that has been captured through the GR SAMSA project, where the target group are students with some form of intellectual disability, is that even though they experience difficulties to find workplaces for internship, that is not the biggest problem. The problem is rather a matter of the internship not leading into a job after graduation. Teachers testify that this doesn't have anything to do with students having difficulties during their internship, but that some of them might need a little bit more guidance and support. And the conditions for companies here in Sweden to employ people with these kind of needs are limited, since it requires money and time. So that's a big problem we have seen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. I straight go to our next panelist, and I would ask Sophia, what are the barriers? What is your experience?
Yeah, assistive technology can be part of the solution, but as we said in the beginning, it requires changes to match the needs of the environment we place it and the needs of the individual. So unfortunately for now, seems technology is a little bit part of the problem that people with intellectual disabilities, in our case, face with having equal access to apprenticeships. Some known barriers regarding education and vocational training is the stigmatization of people with disabilities, which stops the dialogue between the trainers and the education providers towards people with disabilities, exactly because we have a way of thinking that it's their problem that they do not understand, that they cannot learn, and not part of how we teach, how we provide materials. And this blocks their equal participation and access to education. At the same time, even if there is a will by the professionals, the educational systems, most of them are quite inflexible because they need to follow strict protocols for the recognition of skills. And the educational systems that are more flexible, it's either because there is not some kind of recognition of skills, and at the same time, they are very limited in the choices they provide to people with intellectual disabilities. So again, we have people with intellectual disabilities having to choose specific things to learn from because the information is accessible. And having this limitation of choice affects their self-motivation in learning and developing themselves, because they can't see the correlation between what they want to be and what we support them to become. At the same time, we have no friendly spaces for them to learn. Most of the times it's not really accessible, at least in Greece. I don't know what is happening in the rest of Europe, but we have difficulties with accessible structures and sensory friendly spaces. And again, many times educational materials are not really accessible, even if we have now developed the digital format and the digital classrooms. Most of the times the materials shared through these platforms are not really accessible for everyone. So there are solutions for all these things, and organizations and trainers can provide guidelines on how to people with intellectual disabilities on how to access these things. But unfortunately, we are still a little bit behind this because there's a digital gap in skills, both by service providers, families, and people with intellectual disabilities, because until recent years, their lifestyle didn't really require to have digital skills. Technology wasn't really so important in their daily living. So with all the inclusive problems people with disabilities face, the focus was in different things. And suddenly we have the digital revolution. Everything it has become so connected and depending on technology that all of us need to adapt to technology, but at the same time, technology does not really adapt to the needs of everyone. So we need to improve our understanding of what assist technologies are, what technology can offer, train, or the supporting environment of people with disabilities in order for them to use more independently these tools. And at the same time, we need to train the labor market on how to utilize these solutions, because right now they use mainstream tools. Many times they use highly advanced technology, which is even more difficult to train on. So we have people with intellectual disabilities getting trained on how to use everyday technology, but at the same time, this technology isn't really part of the daily life of the work environment we want them to be part of. So these are the barriers that we have identified, and through our practices, we try to bridge this kind of gap, raise the awareness in the labor market, raise the awareness inside the families and inside the organization, and train our skills and try to follow the trends as much as possible in order to build the relevant skills in all the stakeholders.
Many thanks, Sophia. I heard words like stigmatization, difficult access, spaces are not appropriate, insufficient training offer, the technology doesn't adapt to people, people have to adapt to technology. Maybe Fabrice will know about that. An important aspect you also mentioned is there is no flexibility when it comes to recognition of skills. Lots of aspects to be discussed. Thanks a lot, Sophia. Now I turn to the representative from Baden-Württemberg. Andrea, what are the barriers that you are confronted with?
Yes, I will. Now that we heard a lot about people with mental disabilities, I might turn a bit to people with physical handicaps. And as I said before, people with sensorical problems like hearing and watching and seeing. Yeah, they are quite often at our focus. And I think I can say, I already gave some examples before, but I can say that technology in the classroom and also at workplaces, it really starts to help a lot. And maybe I can give some examples. I already mentioned before that in our classroom, for example, if you have people who have difficulties with listening, it nowadays helps a lot that we can use software, these recording software that records the spoken word, and then we have subtitling in the classroom. In the past, we needed a person there, an assistant who did translations with hands or also by typing things. Now we can use technology here to make sure that people in the classroom can follow the lessons. So that's maybe just a small example, but I think it helps a lot. And also, if, for example, it comes to people who have reading difficulties, which could be a problem quite often also in these, let's say, low threshold language and vocational training classes we have. And there it helps a lot that nowadays really everybody has a smartphone that helps to read a text, have it read out loud. Even we work with immigrants, so it is even possible to switch between languages. And the good thing I would say is that this is everyday a technology that is available now, and it can be used by people. And we might talk here also about stigmatization, and I think it's a good thing that it is everyday technology, so everybody understands that it's normal to use this. And also if it comes to people, for example, who have difficulties in calculating in mathematics, again, we have a lot of tools now that help to overcome barriers. So for us, technology in the classroom, in these vocational training environments certainly helps. And maybe I can give my own example because I'm missing my left arm, and yeah, being around in working and education environments for many years, I can say that nowadays it is easier to use technology. I give a simple example. So in the past, you had, if you were talking on the phone, you had your hand here, and now you want to take notes and can't. What do you do? So nowadays, it's absolutely normal to have your phone in your ear, and then you have a hand free, and you can write things then. Or Anne, you had the pleasure to drive by car with me, and now that I can talk to my car, so I often go to like workplaces of students. Now that I can talk to my car and I can do all my phone calls from the car, you know, dialing automatically and just giving commands by speaking. And these are really simple things, but I think in workplace situations, quite often is these simple secrets you have to find. And for example, also if you at a workplace, if you have to type and maybe you don't have a hand, in theory you can just speak, and then you have the email or whatever you would like to write, you have it then there. I don't use it, but I could. And I think these are a lot of really very practical things that can be done and can be supported by technology. And as I said, the good thing is that now everybody knows this. So also the employers know that exists. And I think that's an important thing to overcome barriers, because people know there is technology that can help also people with handicaps working at a normal workplace, let's say. Yeah, so that's from my side.
Thanks a lot, Andrea, for your testimonial. And indeed, I do remember when you were driving by car, I was very impressed. Yes, so we hear from everybody, technology helps a lot. We just need to make sure that the awareness in society is raised. A lot of people are aware about it, but we still need more. So let's listen now to Fabrice. Having heard about the challenges that learners with disability face, what are the barriers from a technological viewpoint in helping these persons? What makes it easy or challenging to help disabled learners with assistive technologies? What type of technologies should be used and which should not be used? Fabrice, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, in the experience that we had with, let's say, the adaptation of technology towards the necessity of any environment that would be faced with disabilities of people, Cost was one of, let's say, always a major topic that we saw, whether it was with a state entity or whether it was with a private entity, it was always cost, which I totally understand, of course. So from our point of view, meaning that we are a commercial company, of course, and that we have to create some sales, we created an aspect that, first of all, we know for a fact that technology and robotics in particular is the plan B. The plan A is always the humans to humans, and we understand that and we respect that. In plan B, we are focusing on offering possibilities even without hardware. Of course, when there is somebody that is, let's say, that needs hearing aid or other things, there are not tons of possibilities without the technology. But on the other hand, when we are focusing, for instance, on children with autism or in classrooms, we are able to work with less hardware and with more on the software. We believe that intelligent software is something that is really adding a value and is at a low cost. You can cost software, let's say, on the development, but once you implement that software, it's up to you whether the panel is big or not to make it accessible for the people to use. So my biggest barrier that I always have focused on was always the cost. And then the next one, if I would use a barrier, if I would use the name barrier, would be the accessibility for the users, meaning that sometimes it's too difficult for the teachers to use the newest technology. They have to adapt a lot to software, to platforms, to stuff like that. So that means that they have to learn about that technology. That takes time, that takes investment of time and energy. And this would be the second barrier. So we have to make everything as accessible as possible, as easy to use as possible, and at lowest cost as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabrice. Yes, I think cost, everyone will agree with that. In all European countries, there won't be any difference. The costs are high and we have to raise awareness at all levels. Decision makers, they all have to be aware of this, and it is worth investing in technology. Sophia, a change of mindset is needed, and this gets back to what was said earlier, learning with each other and not dividing learners in groups of people with and without disability, all these things we heard already before. But we would like to hear the recommendations that you suggest.
Yeah, as we said, it's a really complex situation because we have different kind of sectors that we need to collaborate together. So it will be really important to have policymakers on our side in creating opportunities and collaboration between these different sectors. And we are talking sectors of technology, of course, the disability sector, people with disabilities and their supporting environment, the labor market, and the educational system. So only with these sectors collaborating together, we can understand the individual needs of and the combination of this kind of collaboration on and what assistive technology can be part to improve the accessibility of people with disabilities in these different types of environments. So policymakers, it will be important to allow political changes and provide the funding that will create sustainable projects and not one-shots that and good practice that stay there. We need to make the next step forward. We need to have a way to incorporate universal design in education and in technology environments, technological environments, and at the same time raise the awareness on how technology can help, because we have the industry and technology sector that is yet quite away from the needs of disability, and we do not really understand what accessibility means in the end, because accessibility needs are quite different based on the different target groups, and when you don't have a dialogue involving end users to understand their needs and how design should be changed, we really don't have sustainable solutions. At the same time, we need more training of the service providers to understand the technological changes. So in their turn can support people with disabilities in using these kind of technologies. And because technology is really moving very fast, it will be really important to enable academia and university to study further how technology and how it advances can support people with disabilities to gain more from what they can offer. This will lead to better implementation of technologies inside the educational sector and the sector of disabilities. And the last but not least, we talk about technology, but at the same time, how many people have access to assistive technology equipment. So we have people with disabilities that may not be in an economic state that can buy this kind of equipment, and they may rely to service providers giving this equipment to them. So it will be really important to provide funds to people with disabilities to buy their own equipment to use it in their own lives. We have smart homes right now. We have vehicles that rely on technology, but at the same time, these are, while they will free people with disabilities to be more independent and autonomous, at the same time, they do not have the necessary funds to reach towards this kind of technological autonomy. And I think policymakers should pay attention to this kind of barriers.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Yes, let's continue with the recommendations for practitioners and policy makers. We heard Andrea and we heard Sophia, and I would like to switch to Andrea for this part of the discussion.
Yes, my recommendations actually would be, or I have two recommendations with me, I would say. So the first one is that if we talk about accessibility and use of assistive technology in education and at the workplace, we have to consider that we have to take a very individualized approach here. So individualization and personalization, that is both needed on the one hand for the person with a disability or a handicap, really having a close look at where the problem is and what technology does exist to overcome the projects, or to make education, for example, digital education and digital tools accessible. So how can this person be prepared to use the tool or to use a platform, for example? So that's one part of the individualization. But also if we talk about company training, vocational education and training in companies, of course also the companies themselves, the mentors at a workplace, they need individualized support. Also getting to know what is possible, how could things work, and also looking at the training arena, let's say, from that part, from the part of the employer. And what I can say is that in Germany, we have this big network actually in place, offering assistance if it comes to technological aspects, also if it comes to financial aspects, because we heard that finance is often a problem. So we have a very broad system of different sorts of consultancies offered by chambers of commerce for the employers, offered by different insurances and supporting networks for the students and apprentices themselves. So we have a big network. I had hoped that I could bring somebody from them with me today, but it didn't work for different reasons. But I think it's important to have this individualized approach. And the second policy recommendation is that definitely we have to work on the change of mindsets, because I think the practical problems are one thing, and there are a lot of options to overcome them, practical problems of students or apprentices. But I think a lot of maybe the students themselves or the companies as well, and also schools, they are quite often a bit reluctant, and they fear there could be problems. Maybe it's better to avoid problems, things like that. So I think it's important to work on that side, change of mindset in schools and companies, and to avoid the tendency that you send people with handicaps to, specific workshops, specific institutions where they work just in an environment. I think that's important to work at that side. And I'm optimistic that technology helps because everybody is used to it, as I said before. So, there might be less prejudice that there could be problems.
Many thanks, Andrea. Yes, indeed, a change of mindset is needed. I think this says already a lot. Let's go to Emma. From your experience, Emma, what are the needs that you see based on your experience with Dignit and Samsar?
Yes, I think I will touch upon some of the same recommendations as Sophia and Andrea. And I have also touched on several of these aspects linked to the other issues. But what I want to emphasize, among other things, is the importance of listening to the target group's needs. That aspect is important in all forms of development, of course, but perhaps even more so when it comes to this target group, as our experience is that there are many preconceived notions. By also involving the target group in the development work, this contributes greatly to new perspectives. Another important aspect that I have touched on before is that we must create the conditions for internship to move over into employment. To generalize, this is in many cases a target group that may need extra support, and many Swedish companies at least testify that the finances and the time, as we have talked about before, is lacking. And public workplaces also testify that there are regulations that makes it difficult for them to create new professional roles based on the target group's strengths and abilities. And these are conditions that need to be reviewed to create opportunities in the labor market for this group. We have also experienced that this is a target group that is sometimes forgotten and where there is a need to invest financial resources to strengthen the work in several areas. Among other things, the shortage of trained teachers in special needs schools in Sweden is incredibly low. And here we find it problematic to find announcements of project funds that are aimed specifically to this target group. Many announcements are also not adapted to the conditions that exist within the Swedish special needs schools. Finally, I want to highlight the importance of making workplaces aware of the benefits of employing this target group. How can we turn the perspective from being about making a community contribution to understanding how the target group can enrich a workplace? I actually heard a report on the morning news program here in Sweden today, and they interviewed a ski instructor in the Swedish mountains. And one of the ski instructors said that everyone can ski, it's just a matter of adaptation. And imagine if we could have the similar attitude to participation in the labor market. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Emma. The last person I want to turn to related to recommendations for practitioners and policymakers. Fabrice, what do you have as recommendations?
Well, we are already faced, and we will be even more faced in the future with the challenge that there is a lack of programmers and there is a lack of tech people. There is what we call, and it's widely said, a war on talent. I think that problem creates also an opportunity. And that's why I'm always saying also to any policymaker that I'm meeting is that we have to focus more on STEM education, whether it is for disabled, younger, whether it is for any educational environment. STEM is the future. And what I can see is that we are behind in Europe. We have a company in Africa based in Rwanda, where we have 12 people, young people, school leavers working. They are already higher in level than some of the programmers that we have here in Belgium. I've been traveling of course, to Japan, to China. It's all focused on technology education, all focused on STEM. This is something that I'm really begging even some people is that introduce that, because on every question that we ask here, whether it is in Belgium or even in other European countries, to introduce, let's say, STEM possibilities in education, often we get the answer, but we already have STEM, and then we look at what they have, but it's far from STEM. The future is not in coding, it's not in difficult coding. We see that more and more platforms are coming up with no-code and low-code environment. This is the new phase of development, and I think that this is the future, and that we have to focus on that for the children that today are in school, whether they are disabled or not. There are even some disabled children are more motivated to go into that direction than others. So really that would be the recommendation that I would say, start soon and start as fast as possible with our younger, because they will pay the bill in the future if they do not adapt to anything that is coming towards us. Technology is coming towards us from all over. We have to adapt. That's what I wanted to share on that.
Thanks a lot, Fabrice. Yes, I retain war on talent. I think that the war has already started, but if we listen to you, it will only become worse. If I understood well, no-code teaching means that you can build software applications without writing the code yourself, which means that non-technical people could build software.
Indeed.
That's it.
Yeah, indeed.
I think a lot of people did not know that. I think it's very interesting to hear this, and we will certainly find out more about it in the near future. Thanks a lot. We could now start with the question and answer session. We still have some time left. We would like to hear from our audience members. Maybe they have some questions and answers, and let's pick up on questions that have been posted in the chat during our discussion. Emma, Dig Inc., we have learned, is a partnership between 3 European countries, Sweden, France, and the UK. When making learning environments more inclusive, what is the added value of cross-border cooperation? What can you learn from each other? And what conditions vary in different countries?
As in most form of development work, it is important to gather knowledge and experiences from several different sources, and this makes it possible to acquire new knowledge and perspectives. We have not reached this far in the project yet, but so I think that more similarities and differences will probably be discovered over time. Regarding challenges in finding internships in certain industries, this seems to be similar in the 3 countries. All 3 countries also testify that they spend quite a lot of time finding relevant workplaces for internship. How each country has chosen to take on different challenges that the target group and the schools raise, we will continue work with later in the spring, and I'm certain that the different experiences will contribute with great value. We have good experiences when it comes to collaborating with other European countries through this and through other projects. And one example is for a partnership that led to the development of a game that is supposed to make pupils aware of uses and practices on the internet. So I think the collaboration will bring a lot of learning experiences for us in this project as well.
Many thanks. I see another question. Do you have a gender equality and gender mainstreaming approach in your projects? I don't know who can answer this.
Perhaps I can
Yes,
start.
maybe I can. Sorry.
Please go ahead.
Yeah,
and
maybe
just-
I can answer it. I mean, as Volkshochschulen, as adult education providers, we have in general in our schools gender mainstreaming approaches. And before, for example, I gave the example of these language and vocational education and training programs we have. And there we work together with job centers, for example, offering these classes to persons who are looking for jobs and for training. And we have some criteria there ensuring that all people will have access, regardless whether they are women or men, and also trying to encourage women, for example, to jobs that are maybe more used by men, etc. So we have a lot of practical gender mainstreaming approaches in general, and of course, in this case, they are also an aspect and important.
I don't know whether someone wants to add something.
And maybe I would like to add something also on that same question, but not about the gender, but about the security, cybersecurity, and data privacy. That was formulated in the same question, and I wanted to share some experience as well from our side, meaning not only on the robotic side, but also on the connected devices that are being used as well in this type of education help. Most of these devices are made in China, and we were confronted already since 2016, 2017 with what we call ping back. So meaning a remaining connection between the tool that is here and let's say the country that provided this tool, or the hardware manufacturer that provided this tool, meaning in China. So from 2017 until 2022, we have been focusing on developing a European platform that we are installing on all the devices, on all the connected devices, in order to prohibit for data information to go outside of Europe and to run on a cloud, let's say, in China. So this is also one of the main things that some companies are faced with, and that would be a real big barrier, is that more and more we see that data is flowing back towards the manufacturer's country. And this is something that really that the European Union have to focus on as well in order to protect the usage of all the connected devices here in Europe. That's what I wanted to share on this.
I'm experiencing some technical problems. Am I the only one?
I have no problem.
I believe I don't have any problem too.
No.
Yeah.
So, Anne, you are the only one. Maybe I will add it in the chat.
Yeah, well, maybe I can also say something on data privacy. Because I mentioned this learning platform.
Apparently, I'm the only one having technical problems. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe I just go on. We have this learning platform, and data security there is a big issue, and we being pretty strict with data protection in Germany. That is something we do.
Yeah, it's very important to protect the data. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
And even today, we see it in the press as well. It was a big issue in Belgium that EAfA is providing with Wi-Fi solutions to the government, but the government is applying to their ministers that they are not allowed to use EAfA mobile phones. So it's quite strange.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, in Margarita, for services, we have developed to use internally with our service users. We follow the protocols of GDPR inside the organization, but some kind of challenges not exactly challenge, but there are some projects where we have developed digital stories that will be published in social media, etc., which can become quite public. So what we are trying to do is help our learners understand more about safety rules and communication rules, because like in our daily living in a real community, when you are in the digital environment, you have to follow the same rules, because you want your rights to be respected, but you need to respect the rights of others, and you must understand how to share information, because perhaps there are sensitive topics that you don't really want to share with a big public. So while we train on these things, at the same time, when we have projects where we have to proceed with becoming public and our service users sharing all this information, there are challenges to face, perhaps with fears of families, especially when the person is not under, they have some guardian, sorry, for their to make decisions. So it's not really up to them to decide, but we must collaborate with the families. We must understand better that it is okay when publish and when it is okay. So this kind of rules of security and everything is what we are trying to further cultivate as skills to our service users. And regarding gender, as Andrea, we also have an approach of not excluding everyone. So perhaps there is not a specific plan about gender equality to make sure that everyone is involved. Our educational technology workshop is open for everyone. It's a parallel activity that we try to involve all our service users to become part of in different circles of training. So there isn't something that leaves everyone behind. If we have people that are not so willing to participate because technology seems, too far away from them, they still have the chance to understand more about it, despite their gender or orientation.
We received a question in the chat, the next question actually from Anna. Maybe if you allow me, I will ask it to Emma and Sophia, and Andrea will take a little bit of place if it's okay for you. But the question is, in your country, how is awareness around disabilities in apprenticeships raised, and how is disability in education discussed? Emma, would you like to share us first?
I think at least in our region, we have, as I previously mentioned, we have this regional collaboration platform, which enables collaboration between educational organizers, working life and non-profit organizations. And one purpose of this platform is to raise awareness around disabilities and to create possibility to exchange experiences. And based on the challenges that are raised, we create joint activities in order to raise awareness of the target group's abilities and strengths. And similar platforms does not really exist in other parts of Sweden. So we also collaborate with the National Agency of Education to spread the experience on a national level, to see if you can form similar platforms in other regions.
Sophia?
Yeah, we have the same approach as well. In Greece, the educational system is available for everyone, but at the same time, there are other kind of educational programs that people with disability can choose to participate in instead of mainstream school, for example, exactly because mainstream school isn't really always accessible by everyone. So we have examples of people with intellectual disabilities coming to Margarita after finishing their school years and not having achieved basic skills like reading or numerous skills. So while they have managed to complete their educational circle in the mainstream educational system, we still need to cultivate their skills in Margarita using more accessible to them methods. So we have this kind of situation, and how we try to raise the awareness in mainstream schools and in community in general is through joint activities as well. We try to use programs we participate in to find common points of interest between the different sectors, and have people with intellectual disabilities be part of the training activity, like a peer support type of method, or them becoming the teacher, or learning together with the other and creating this dynamic inside the groups where they can all benefit from each other. So this way we destroy, let's say, the ideas of what disability is and isn't, and at the same time we build the self-respect of people with disabilities by having them in an equal position as the rest of people from the community inside their team. So they really become very proud when they help other people, and this really helps with promoting apprenticeships and disabilities in different sectors of our lives.
Thank you. And I see that Nicolas came. I'm sorry, we took a little bit over.
Yes, of course. And hello, everyone. My name is Nicolas Lawson, and I'm part of the organizing team from ECRIS. Unfortunately, we are experiencing some technical difficulties, and our moderator is currently unable to connect. We only have 5 minutes left of the event, and as such, I was going to step in and help to conclude this event. So I would just like to see if Ima is around. If we can have her go on stage, please. Wonderful. And perhaps you could, from your expert point of view, summarize some of the takeaways that we have heard today.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Because my connection is not very good. Okay, good. So it has been really a very rich meeting. I think despite the very diverse presentations, it was good to have some common messages or common threads in the messaging. I would like to highlight a couple of them. From the different presentations, it was clear that the context in which the assistive technology is used is really essential, and that attention should be paid whether we are using the technology at schools, at work, or for other purposes, so that it is possible for the person with a disability to use it. It was also clearly said the importance of assistive technology for independent living, for supporting in daily life activities persons with disabilities, and for activities such as interpersonal communication, interaction, socialization, and so forth. The diversity of technologies available allow to address multiple impairments. We talk about intellectual disabilities, sensory disabilities, but still a lot needs to be done in order to make that technology being adequately used by the individuals and the surroundings of that individual for a proper interaction. And in that context, several times it was referred to the importance of training teachers, training professionals, facilitating and supporting the use of the technology. Among the among the barriers that persons with disabilities, you see, I was already obsessed with the first one, which is cost. One of the big barriers is cost. The financing of that technology, of those technologies, emerge as a cost, as an important barrier. and together with other more pervasive types of barriers, like could be stigmatization, for example. It is also very clear that, or became very clear that, as I said, the issue of train the trainers and provide spaces, inclusive spaces for the use of those technologies, and try to ensure that the technology is set up in a way that serves the individual, whether it's the children, older persons, or persons in working environments. The other element that I would like to highlight is the ease of use, or the lack of ease of use, of the technology for persons with disabilities. So working more on accessibility of the user interfaces, and personalization, customization of those interactions ways. There were quite a number of recommendations being provided, starting by having policymakers to create these opportunities, and from different sectors, to have multidisciplinary teams and environments. And we are talking about putting together the ICT sector, persons with disabilities and their organizations, labor market, educators. There is really a need to enhance cooperation, and for policies to facilitate and support that type of multidisciplinary cooperation. There is a need, there were recommendations to address the issue of the cost and the financing, providing funds, not only for using the technology in professional settings or educational settings, but also at home, so that individuals can have access to those technologies in the daily living. In addition, a recommendation was there again to individualize and personalize the technology, the accessibility and assistive technology in the area of education and the workplace, providing the additional support of the professionals to the individuals. And it was seen as an opportunity, the creation of companies, consultancies, or organizations that would create jobs by providing this type of support, and addressing also there were recommendations to change the mindset to be more receptive and inclusive. In that context, listening to the target groups, listening to persons with disabilities, it was very much recommended as a way to better understand the needs, but also the solutions and their adequacy. Then finally, a big plea to teach more, a recommendation to teach or pay more attention in education to STEM disciplines, given their link with technology, or their importance to develop this type of technologies. And I would like to go even a little bit further with some recommendation from my side, which is that these persons that more and more need to be trained on technology, they will be taught not only on technology in general, but on accessible technology, inclusive technologies, and assistive technologies. There is very little professionals that are able to perform and develop those tasks, even in mainstream big companies. With the legislation we are putting forward, these companies are telling us they have difficulties in finding professionals that know about accessibility of ICT. And here, to just end, I would like to leave this as an opportunity for new jobs, at an opportunity for new developments, because developing accessible technology should be in our and assistive technology should be really among our priorities in the area of technologies. This is a little summary of what has been said, and I pass back the floor to Anne whom I hope is back reconnected, because we were both having connection problems. So probably our own server.
Thanks a lot, Immaculada. Indeed, I am back again after the technical problems. I would like, before we finish, may I ask the speakers to take a moment for a group photo, just 1 second. Thank you. And as our event reaches its end, I want to thank our speakers again and our audience. And finally, we would like to invite you to the next European Alliance for Apprenticeships events. And there is one coming up on the 11th of May. There will be a webinar on higher apprenticeships and a higher vocational education training. Invitations will follow shortly. And on the 9th and 10th of June, it is finally time for a hybrid event of the European Alliance for Apprenticeships, European Year of Rail. The deadlines for registration are Friday, 20th of May for in-person attendance, and Monday, the 6th of June, if you're joining us online. Don't miss these events. We are posting links in the chat, and we look forward to welcoming you soon again. Many thanks.